Live from Beit Shemesh and broadcasted around the world, you are listening to the From Entrepreneur Podcast with your host, Nahum Kligman. Interviews and advice from Jewish entrepreneurs from around the world. Listen, learn, be Matzliach.
Welcome to episode 24 of the From Entrepreneur, and today I am, as always, excited to interview fantastic entrepreneurs, but this one's a very close friend of mine. I want to welcome to the show Moshe Teren. I originally met Moshe when he came on board my first startup when I had moved to Israel called Invite. So we worked very closely together for a couple of years. And, you know, if someone asked me about Moshe Teren, the one thing that I would say is that he is a rare breed. And what do I mean by that? Is that sometimes you'll have a fantastic entrepreneur, a fantastic visionary, and other times you may find a fantastic technology guy who is, also a programmer that, knows every step from start to finish of anything that has to do with tech. And, but it's very rare to find somebody that excels at both. And really that is, Moshe does have those rare qualities that he could be the CEO, CTO wrapped in one. And, so I'm super excited besides being a good friend and having the privilege to have worked with him in the past. But, we're going to catch up a little bit, hear what he's been up to, and, try to see if we could inspire you guys to succeed even more. So, Moshe, welcome to the show.
Hey, Nahum. Good to see you.
It's great to see you with your Cubs hat on.
Well, just to paint the picture for our listeners, this is a special day for Cubs fans. We closed out on the NL DS last night, Division Series, for the first time in, I believe, since 1908 that the Cubs have won a Division Series at home. So we're looking forward to bigger things.
And in similar news, it's a Yovel year every 50 years, as we know. So it makes sense.
I think the Rebbe gives it a bracha.
Yeah. So if you were to describe yourself, what would you say? I gave a little bit of an overview, but why don't you tell people what you've been up to in general terms, and then we'll go a bit back into your background, and then we'll move forward from there. So,
well, I am an entrepreneur. I have spent the last 16 years in startups, small companies at either beginning of an idea all the way through to taking it to market, or in a couple cases, I joined a company after it was already founded or a plan had already been put into place, and to help to take it to another level. But in the last 6 years, I've been working mostly on the Streaming the Net website business that I founded in 2009. It is a media aggregation site that enables folks around the world to listen to live radio, watch live television from places around the world, and we do a business based on advertising revenues.
So I just want to clarify to my listeners, because, Moshe also has, you hear about these guys that are sitting in a room somewhere. They don't have any staff and they're not very public in what they're doing. And I think this is the first time probably, Moshe, you're sharing your story with us. So I appreciate that. But, Moshe is one of those guys that, there's no staff from what I understand, right?
I do have a group of consultants that have worked with me over the years,
right?
That I tap into their resources as needed. But I have not had actual employees through 6 years.
And yet you've been growing the business and you've been successful, but it's not something, sometimes you have a startup and people are talking about it and you're publicizing. And here you've been quietly, and I guess it's sneistic away. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but, Baruch Hashem, doing extremely well, but, keeping it quiet, so to speak, on a personal level, but obviously on the...
Yeah, Baruch Hashem, it's been bracha and hatzlacha. I mean, there are, of course, accountants and lawyers who make money from the business as well, but for the most part, the construct of creating a business, taking it from an idea to implementation requires a lot of tedious development of ideas, and then, of course, the actual execution, which is really a much later stage in the development process of a business. We could talk about that if you're interested. But the effort of starting up this business, most of the development of the business occurred in the earlier years, and then the technical side was in the earlier years, and then the development on the business side has blossomed in the last few years.
So, but from a revenue standpoint, you started in 2009. Did you first of all, I guess the revenue model you said is advertising. Did you start to make some money right away? Did you know it was going to be such a big hit, or did it take, time before it really started rolling?
The first year we made more money than we put into the business. We pretty much self-funded the business, and you say we, you mean you? Well, this is the Royal. We're sitting here in a nice air-conditioned office in my house, and the we, I guess, includes me and the mortgage. But yeah, we did require some startup capital to get the business going. But once the actual site was launched, we did in the first year experience enough revenues to more than cover the outlay, and since then, Baruch Hashem, it's been a really great ride.
Beautiful. Okay, let's take a step back a little bit. I think we mentioned that. I mean, the only reason you would be a Cubs fan is because you're from Chicago. So, where were you born? Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? How'd you end up in Israel? Let's talk about that for.
Well, Nachum, just for Cubs fans out there, I just
all three of you.
I feel the need to defend that Nachum just displayed his New York.
Oh. Yeah, I say because once in 100 years they do something. So
I thought the Cubs were considered Chicago. The WGN reaching the rest of the country. Maybe they don't get to New York. I'm assuming they do. That it would be actually America's team for baseball. But okay, I was born in Chicago. I lived there my whole life until making Aliyah in 1994 with my wife and at the time 2 kids.
Oh wow. So you were already married when you moved here in 94.
Yeah, we've been here, thank God, 21 years plus, all of that time in Beit Shemesh.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we came to Beit Shemesh. It was still a 3-horse town.
Right.
And there was one pharmacy that worked for a couple hours a day. And we moved to Ramat Beit Shemesh in 99, and we've been here since.
Beautiful, beautiful. And so where'd you, in Chicago, where'd you go to school? Where'd you...
I went to several of Chicago's finest day schools, but for high school I went to Skokie Yeshiva for a couple of years, and then I wanted to try the other side of town, went to Ida Crown Jewish Academy for the other 2, and I finished there.
And you went to college, I assume, or...
College,
university, technology.
This is supposed to be a
it's not only Haredi. We have a lot of non-Haredi listeners.
Okay, I went to the University of Illinois at Chicago, and my undergraduate degree is in political science. I had originally wanted and intended to be a lawyer. I was planning to go to law school. I got a job in college in a kosher meat packing company.
No way.
Sinai 48.
See, I didn't know that about you.
Yeah, there you go.
So you were a meat packer? Can I
I
worked
in the office.
Oh,
I worked in the purchasing department of a meat packing company, and during my tenure there, I noticed a lot of the operational activity and procedures. This is still in the 1980s, Nachum. Were you born yet?
Yeah, I'm a 70s.
And I noticed there's a lot of procedures and operations and things that were going on that just seemed very convoluted. And I started to map out in my head and then eventually put down on paper and brought to management just some, I would call it operational, but it was focused more on how the sales and purchasing departments could work in a more efficient way. And I diagrammed them out. I used, I think it was a Mac at the time, those
in the 80s?
Yeah.
They had a Mac
like those Mac 2s, like the very early Mac.
Yeah.
It was very difficult to use in those days.
Right.
But I brought the ideas forward, and I started writing out very simple macros on Excel to help streamline some of the processes. And then it just got me thinking that, I could be doing this.
So you presented it to your boss, and
I went straight to the owners of the company, and I said, let's do this.
And they did it? I
was very persuasive.
So you left the meatpacking company and you said, hey, this is something I want to really get into?
I got a job at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange as a systems analyst with no previous college experience or anything on my resume showing that I could do it.
Right.
But I was persuasive as well to the management that I could get the job done.
What company was that, you said?
The company. Nachum's like, I don't know, there must be companies in Chicago. I know that, right? The Chicago Mercantile Exchange, the CME. It's, I think, at the time at least, it was the world's largest futures exchange, commodity exchange in the world. I worked there in systems as a systems analyst, a short time actually, because we made Aliyah not too long afterwards. I was there for less than 2 years. Mm-hmm. And then in 94, I came to Israel on the back of some analytical and programming experience. Not to get into the details of it, I managed to get a job right off the bat in Israel for Intel Electronics.
Oh wow! So you didn't come to Israel with the job already in place. You just said we're coming here, and then you just got this job.
Yeah, we're actually Zionists. This is before Nefesh B'Nefesh.
Right.
We came on a wing and a prayer. We had, I think, enough money to last a year.
Right.
I'm not talking about buying a car and a house and saying, okay, now we've got money. I mean, we came with nothing. I got a job within a month. Thank God. With it's an Aliyah success story. It does sound like it.
Yeah, it does. No, it's fantastic.
And I worked from 94 to 2000 with Intel, first in their Jerusalem office, and then we moved out to Kiryat Gat when the plant was the manufacturing plant was created down there.
Beautiful, beautiful. And how long did you stay with Intel for?
I was there for just about 6 years, a little bit less than 6 years. And I left them. I was at the time managing the supply chain inventory systems. I was responsible for the inventory systems of Intel and how spare parts and machine tool parts made their way through the factories, through the factory floor. And
so very exciting stuff.
It actually was. I mean, it was many millions of dollars worth of inventory. It greatly contributed to the bottom line of Intel. So, and the fun thing about that was we traveled a lot with Intel. Is they're very big proponents of doing something right and then cut, copy, and paste. And we would, anytime a new facility was opened, we would go as a small team, as a founding team, if you will, and help the new facility take those best tools and practices that we accomplished at the Kiryat Gat plant in southern Israel over, for example, to Ireland. We did it in, I'm going to say Portland. We helped out in Chandler, Arizona, near Phoenix, etc.
Nice. Very cool. So then after 6 years, what'd you end up doing?
Well, if you've noticed the pattern, until now I was working for corporations,
right.
Big corporations, a very small cog in a very, very big wheel with a lot of organizational politics and culture.
Right.
And in my heart, I was always wanting to go back to those meatpacking days of looking at processes, looking at ways to make things better. The internet at the time was really in its natency.
Right.
And a friend, somebody that I knew from the neighborhood, came forward with an opportunity to join a startup in Jerusalem at the time it was called News Alert.
Okay.
And eventually News Alert became Lumen. It had offices in Jerusalem for R&D and production, development, and sales and other offices around the world, but primarily focused off of Wall Street, near Wall Street in lower Manhattan. Mm-hmm. And so I was responsible. By the time we actually exited to a company called Pinnacore, which itself was bought out by CBS MarketWatch a couple years afterwards. And then their organization ended up being rolled into Reuters Media, but that's a story for another day. That I was responsible by that point for R&D and development for this company. And it was a great education of taking something from, at that point it wasn't scratch. There was very much an existing business when I joined.
Right.
But I was one of the early employees, and I watched the whole product life cycle of the business from somewhat of an apex in a huge hiring boom and burst as the Wall Street was very much affected by September 11.
Right.
We were in the financial services industry, and the technology was great, but there weren't a lot of companies searching for
new. So after they exited, so then this is what, 2002?
This is 2002. I did some consulting for the company that eventually it was exited to.
Okay.
And then I worked with some colleagues consulting to them on satellite or parachute companies that came out forth from it. And I worked with them for the next year and a half or so until 2004, when I met a couple of really snazzy looking people in Ramat Beit Shemesh who suggested that I join them in, I believe at the time I was employee number 4.
Me, Ariel, Harry. Yeah, I guess. I guess. Yeah, we had. I think you were definitely the 4th main member of the company, the 4th, I say partner, I should say.
And you guys had an idea. You guys had an idea, and I helped to take it forward on the technology side, and eventually ran the technology. Right.
That was that could be a whole other podcast. That story and the fun we've had, kicking ceilings and. Stuff, but okay. So let's jump. So then, after Invite, I left Invite after I think 3 years, and then you stayed on for another couple of years, and then you left in
I think 2008.
In 2008, and then 2009 is when you started streaming the net.
Streaming the net. I had idea that was brewing in my head for quite some time that expats around the world, such as myself, have a natural affinity to the media of the place that they called home before, or the place that they came from. And I wanted very passionately to bring that media, that information to them, just as I wanted to have that for myself.
Right.
And there were some companies doing this. The focus of the company was not on enabling folks to do anything fancy with it. It was just to get them very quickly to the content without any bells or whistles.
For example, like a local news radio program or a local news show.
A classic example would be Latin Americans who move from Mexico or Argentina, Chile to the United States, and they want to get not just Spanish broadcasting in America, but also content from their places where they came from. Filipinos who are spread out around the world and they want to get to Filipino content. Americans living in Israel that want to get to specific content from America.
So it's a great idea, really fantastic, and so you've been doing that for the last bunch of years. So let's what advice. Actually, before we get to some advice, what would you say today? Somebody that is looking to do something from home, looking to run something that can bring it, pay the bills. What space would you say is hot right now that can be done from home or can be done quietly, but still make a big impact?
Okay, the obvious answer to that is internet, in the sense that internet is a platform. It's a place where people can get to you. I think I had mentioned this metaphor to you in the past, that the internet is your mall. So when you want to open up a business, whatever the business is, whether it's good or not so good or great, it needs to be in a place where people can find you. And the internet, if it's done right, can be that place. So the focus needs to be on something that interests you, something that you have, the term is used often, passion, but something that you have a very strong affinity to, that you want to spend your days and nights working on. If you've found something, or if you have something that you're good at, it could be, I don't know, somebody likes to golf, and that's not something very well done in Israel.
Right. Or most of our listeners are actually in the U.S.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. If somebody has a passion about photography, if somebody has a passion about animals, they can create a space, a blog, a how-to site. They could create videos and put that on YouTube. There's 1,000,001 ways that somebody can create a business, literally from just putting together some ideas that are close to them already. Just something that's in front of you, something that you enjoy doing, and transforming that into a package or a product that others around the world can enjoy as well. So,
just to speak a little further on that, because one of the things I've been looking at in terms of the marketplace, I've seen, along the lines of what you're talking about, is creating products, as you just mentioned, educational products, whether it's an ebook or it could be an educational course. Today there are dozens of platforms that makes it easy to give an online course, and there are people that you create it once, do it well, and build up a following and start selling it on either on your own or on multiple platforms. And then I guess you could rinse and repeat. Go to another topic or expand your topic and stuff. And I think that's actually probably a good way to get started in the space, because if you're creating a blog, unless you have it could take a year before you get any sort of serious following, right?
Well, the key advantage to the internet is that there are so many ways now to bring traffic to your site. We can discuss this literally ad infinitum.
Right.
But obvious tools include buying traffic to start with. I wouldn't recommend that to somebody who's just getting started, but for someone who's advanced and they know what they're looking for, you can monetize very quickly. And that's something that, an experienced person can help them. Somebody who's already done that can help them to get to that point.
Where do they find these people? Like, how can you find, again, I'm the guy, I'm sitting in Lakewood, I'm sitting in Brooklyn. I want to open up, I'm passionate about a specific topic. I want to, build it out and, bring in the right traffic and monetize it. Is monetization really just with advertisements or the other ways to, I guess selling your own products we just talked about, but what would you say?
If somebody is literally starting from bootstrap, I would not recommend actually paying for content or paying for advertisements to get people to you,
right.
unless you've done a very small test and you know that you can get back what you put into it from the very get-go. Otherwise, as Albert Einstein once said, I forget the exact quote, but something that you've failed in the past, if you haven't changed what you're doing about it, you can't expect it to have a different outcome.
Right. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results.
Very good.
Yeah. That's one. Okay. I like that quote.
I feel strongly about starting from the heart, starting with an idea about something that you feel strongly about. If I'm sitting here in Ramat Beit Shemesh and all day long I'm thinking about what's going on in the news in Israel and I want people to know about that, I could put that information out for free on Facebook or Twitter because it helps me cathartically to relieve myself. I'm not saying that I have this idea. I'm just saying that somebody who wanted to do that. Or I can create, for example, a blog or a website that enables me and others to talk about that concept and then build an advertising model around it. And you might say, well, I don't know, whatever. But that's exactly what onlysimchas.com or Voice Noise or Rodder.
Voices Nose?
I don't even know how to pronounce it. I'm an American. I speak English and Hebrew.
Right.
The sites like Rodder were basically started on those principles of you have an idea that you feel strongly about, you put the information out, you make others be able to participate in that discussion or to participate in that same channel, and that's what works.
So you're saying, it's not just about putting out the content, but getting people to
engagement. It's about engagement.
Right.
I don't feel very strongly these days about SEO. I know there's a whole cottage industry about using search engine optimization to bring traffic.
Mm-hmm.
The search engines algorithmically will kill you. Anytime that you'll try to outsmart them, I feel strongly that you're not barking up the right tree. I think that the best method and the best...
It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
I think that the best long-term method or channel to bringing good quality traffic to your idea, to your website, to your blog is engaging them with meaningful or useful information or a tool that's meaningful to them and driving it with your interest, with your passion.
Interesting. Very good. Okay. That's some very valuable feedback and very valuable ideas for anybody out there that wants to start something from home. Obviously, I shouldn't say so obvious, but we mentioned some topics, but you try to find something that has a large potential audience, because you pick something too specific and you're not going to be able to get the advertising dollars you need to monetize unless you're just doing it as a hobby, right? So let's talk, and this has been great so far, just to ask you a couple more questions. What can you say is some of the best advice that you received as an entrepreneur?
I think that it's hackneyed. It's been said a million times before, but it really holds true. Do not be afraid to try. If you fail, you can just get up and do it again, and risk and failure are part of the game of success.
Very, very cool. And that's something we've talked about in the past, and so true. That's, I guess, an entrepreneur is willing to take that risk, is willing to go out there, put himself on a limb. And what advice, if someone's just starting out, someone that wants to, someone's inspired by this conversation, he says, he wants to go out and do this. What's the best advice you could give him?
Well, I would say to the person who comes to me with an idea or wants to advance a business concept is that risk and failure happen to everyone, or risk is part of every business, and failure happens to everyone at some point in their career. However, by analyzing and getting as much information together before you actually execute a plan, and by trying as much as possible to understand what are all of the potential pitfalls to failure or to the lack of success that you might have, will help you so that when the failures do come, you have a game plan and how you're going to go forward from there.
Very, very, very useful information. Very great advice. All right, I think we'll just we're almost finished here. Obviously, you and I can keep talking for hours.
Well, I can keep talking.
Yeah. No, I mean, I love talking about entrepreneurship. I love talking about technology. So, but obviously, the podcast can't go on forever. What would you say? And this is like, I guess, what is one of your personal habits that you say contributes to your success? Besides, I'd say tefillah or learning. I know you're very big into Mishnayos.
I have an affinity to all of the Torah She'Ba'al Peh, not just the Mishnayos. I do feel, in terms of preparing oneself for success, that being as analytical as possible, getting into the details, analyzing what it is that you want to accomplish, creating a business plan, and then sticking to it, but understanding that as things fall, that you have alternate plans or forks in the road that you can take as those falls come.
So is that something like you're every day you begin your day with analytics or studying what
100%. I spend a good portion of my morning going through analytics from the previous day to see what are the trends, where are the users coming from, what are they doing, how are they experiencing my site, what are they doing, and what can I engage them with that'll make their experience more meaningful.
Beautiful. So that's also incredible advice. All right, let's we'll end with just one more question. That is, do you have any entrepreneurial books or marketing books or anything that you would recommend to our listeners to read?
I would listen. When I was working in the corporate world, I was a very big masmid of Professor Eliyahu Ratz's The Goal, which is like a game theory construct. It's looking at finding the bottleneck in a process and then looking for ways to disseminate that. But since I've been working in the startup world, I'm not as interested in organizational process, and I am very much focused in responding to the pitfalls as they come. You got a hack attack, you got to resolve it. You've got a server down that has crucial or key information. How are you going to resolve it? And for that, I recommend strongly that everybody reads The Black Swan by Nicholas Taleb, which talks about those black swan events and how he's talking about it primarily from an economic standpoint, but also as a life event management tool. How do we look at things as they come to us that we weren't expecting, and how can we plan for what type of response we will have when they come? Beautiful.
Well, Moshe, I want to thank you for being on the show. It's really some great advice. It's definitely awesome catching up with you. I love, what you're doing, and I know we'll have to wait for another podcast to talk about some future stuff that, we talked about off air, but I'm very excited for the projects you're working on, and thank you again for being on the show.
Okay, thanks, Nachum.
Thank you for listening to the From Entrepreneur podcast with Nachum Kligman. We hope you learned something valuable, and we'll share this with your friends. For show notes, archives of previous episodes, and more information to help you start and grow your business, please visit our website, www.FromEntrepreneur.com. Listen, learn, be Matzliach.